Have you ever caught yourself thinking, "I'll just do it myself," before anyone even had the chance to help? You carry the groceries in one trip, even when it hurts your arms. You spend hours Googling solutions instead of asking someone who already knows. You tell people, "I got it," at work while quietly feeling overwhelmed. You fix problems, solve crises, figure things out, alone. And the strange part is, people see this as a strength. They call you independent, reliable, self-sufficient, the one who never needs anything, the one who always has it handled. But behind that image, there's a quieter reality. You hesitate before asking for help. You feel uncomfortable depending on people. You feel exposed when you don't know what to do. You feel safer struggling than needing. Even when someone offers support, your first instinct is, "No, it's okay. I've got it." Not because you actually have it, but because something inside you whispers, "You should." You learned how to figure everything out alone. How to solve problems without help. How to carry your own weight, and sometimes everyone else's too. And after years of doing this, independence stops feeling like a choice. It starts feeling like a rule. A rule that says needing people is risky. A rule that says asking is uncomfortable. A rule that says you should be able to handle life on your own. If this feels familiar, this video is for you. Because doing everything alone isn't just independence. It's a pattern. And once you understand where that pattern comes from, it starts to make sense. There is a specific kind of pride that comes from being the person who can handle everything alone. It feels quiet, responsible, almost noble. You figure things out. You solve problems. You don't panic easily. You don't wait around for rescue. When something breaks, you research it. When something goes wrong, you fix it. When life becomes overwhelming, you push through it. From the outside, this looks like strength. People admire it. They trust you. They rely on you. They describe you as independent, capable, resilient. You may have even built part of your identity around this idea. The one who always finds a way. The one who doesn't need help. The one who keeps going no matter what. But independence has a shadow side that people rarely talk about. Because independence feels empowering when it is a choice. It feels very different when it feels like the only option. Think about the small everyday moments where this shows up. Your car starts making a strange noise. Instead of asking someone who knows cars, you open YouTube and spend hours watching repair videos. You convince yourself you can learn everything yourself. You would rather struggle for hours than ask a simple question. You feel overwhelmed at work. Your workload keeps growing, your deadlines keep getting tighter, and your energy keeps shrinking. A coworker asks if you need help. You smile and say, "I'm good." Even though you are not good. Even though your stress level is rising. Even though you know the help would actually make things easier. You still say no. A friend offers to listen after a difficult day. You respond with, "It's okay, it's not a big deal." You change the subject. You ask about their day instead. The moment passes. The need stays. This pattern repeats so often that it starts to feel natural. You stop seeing it as avoidance. You start seeing it as responsibility. You become incredibly good at self-reliance. You know how to navigate problems alone. You know how to make decisions alone. You know how to carry emotional weight alone. You become your own backup plan, your own safety net, your own support system. And at first, this feels empowering. Because you can survive difficult situations without depending on anyone. You learn skills. You build resilience. You prove to yourself that you can handle life. But something subtle begins to happen over time. Independence slowly shifts into isolation. Not dramatic isolation. Not visible isolation. The kind that exists quietly underneath daily life. You still have friends. You still have relationships. You still talk to people. But emotionally, you are used to carrying things alone. You don't naturally think of others as part of your support system. You think of them as part of your social world, not your survival world. When a real problem appears, your first instinct is not, "Who can help me?" Your first instinct is, "How do I handle this?" That difference changes everything. Because humans are wired to solve problems together. Our nervous systems calm down when we share stress. Our brains regulate better when we talk through challenges. Our emotions process faster when they are witnessed by someone else. But when you learn to handle everything alone, you train your nervous system to stay in problem-solving mode constantly. There is always something to manage, something to fix, something to handle. You rarely allow yourself the relief of being supported. This creates a quiet, constant pressure. A feeling that life is something you must stay on top of at all times. That if you drop the ball, there is no one to catch it. That if you don't handle things, they simply won't be handled. And over time, this pressure becomes normal. You might even feel uncomfortable when things are easy. When someone offers to help. When someone steps in. When someone tries to carry part of the load. Instead of relief, you feel tension. Instead of gratitude, you feel awkward. Instead of comfort, you feel exposed. Because help creates a strange feeling you are not used to, vulnerability. Accepting help means admitting you cannot do everything alone. It means letting someone see you unsure, overwhelmed, or confused. It means letting go of control, even if only for a moment. And control has become one of your biggest sources of safety. When you do everything yourself, you know what is happening. You know the plan. You know the timeline. You know the outcome depends on you. Depending on others introduces uncertainty. And uncertainty feels risky. What if they let you down? What if they forget? What if they don't care as much as you do? What if they disappoint you? So you eliminate the risk by eliminating the dependency. You carry everything yourself. And the more you do this, the stronger the pattern becomes. Every time you solve a problem alone, your brain receives confirmation. See? You did not need anyone. You handled it. You survived. You figured it out. Self-reliance becomes self-reinforcing. But there is a hidden cost to this pattern. The more you prove you can do everything alone, the less people offer to help. Not because they do not care, but because you appear to have everything under control. People respond to the version of you they see. And the version they see looks capable, composed, and self-sufficient. So they step back. And the belief deepens. See? You tell yourself. No one is coming. No one helps. It is all on me. But the truth is more complicated. You stopped leaving space for help long ago. This is how independence quietly becomes a lifestyle instead of a choice. A rule instead of a preference. A survival strategy instead of a skill. And eventually, this raises a deeper question. If doing everything alone feels so natural, where did this rule come from in the first place? That is where we need to go next. No one wakes up one day and decides they want to do everything alone. This pattern almost always begins long before adulthood, long before independence becomes part of your identity. It begins quietly, in environments where depending on others felt uncertain, inconsistent, or emotionally complicated. As children, we are not supposed to be independent. We are supposed to depend. That is how human development works. Children are wired to seek help, seek comfort, seek guidance, and seek reassurance. Dependency is not weakness in childhood. It is survival. But when a child learns, in subtle ways, that help is unpredictable, something shifts. The nervous system begins to adapt. It begins to prepare for a world where support is not guaranteed. This does not require dramatic trauma. It does not require obvious neglect. Often, it grows out of small repeated experiences that send a quiet message: figure it out yourself. Imagine a child struggling with homework at the kitchen table. They hesitate before asking for help. Maybe their parent is tired after a long day. Maybe their parent is stressed about work or finances. Maybe the house feels tense, busy, distracted. The child senses this emotional atmosphere immediately. Children are incredibly sensitive to emotional availability. So instead of asking for help, they try harder. They spend more time staring at the page. They guess. They struggle quietly. Eventually, they finish. Not perfectly, not easily, but alone. This moment may seem small. But repeated hundreds of times, it teaches a powerful lesson. When things are difficult, try harder before asking. When things feel overwhelming, solve it yourself first. When others are stressed, do not add to the load. Over time, the child becomes proud of solving problems alone. Adults reinforce it without realizing. You are so independent. You are so mature. You figure things out on your own. What sounds like praise becomes training. Another common experience is emotional self-management. A child feels upset, overwhelmed, or scared. They approach a parent looking for comfort. Sometimes the parent responds warmly. Sometimes the parent is distracted. Sometimes the parent minimizes the feeling without meaning to. You are fine. It is not a big deal. You will get over it. Again, nothing dramatic. Nothing intentionally harmful. But the child absorbs the pattern. Emotional support is not always available. Emotional comfort is not always guaranteed. Emotional needs may not always be met. So the child begins to self-soothe. They distract themselves. They retreat to their room. They learn how to regulate their emotions internally instead of relationally. This is where emotional independence begins. And at first, it is adaptive. It helps the child cope. It helps the child function. It helps the child feel safe in environments where emotional support is inconsistent or limited. But adaptation in childhood becomes identity in adulthood. Another powerful influence is the experience of being the easy child. The child who does not cause trouble. The child who does not demand attention. The child who seems mature beyond their years. Many children quickly notice when their parents are overwhelmed. They notice stress, fatigue, financial pressure, emotional strain. And without anyone asking them to, they adjust. They try to make life easier for the adults around them. They become helpful, quiet, self-sufficient, responsible. They stop asking for small things. They stop interrupting. They stop needing as much. Adults often celebrate this. They praise it. They feel relieved by it. And the child feels proud. Proud to be helpful. Proud to be easy. Proud to be low maintenance. But underneath that pride is an important emotional shift. The child begins to associate needing with burdening others. They begin to think, even if they never say it out loud, I do not want to make things harder for anyone. This belief slowly becomes a rule. Handle your own problems. Manage your own emotions. Do not add pressure. Do not create stress. Do not depend too much. And because this strategy works in childhood, it becomes deeply ingrained. The child avoids disappointment by avoiding dependence. Another common experience that strengthens this pattern is inconsistency. When support exists but feels unpredictable, the nervous system learns not to rely on it fully. Sometimes help is there. Sometimes it is not. Sometimes comfort comes quickly. Sometimes it comes too late. Sometimes needs are met warmly. Sometimes they are dismissed unintentionally. Inconsistent support creates uncertainty. And uncertainty makes dependence feel risky. So the brain develops a protective strategy. If you do not depend, you cannot be let down. This strategy feels safe. It feels logical. It feels responsible. And over time, it becomes automatic. By adolescence, this pattern becomes more visible. The teenager who does not ask for rides. The teenager who figures out school alone. The teenager who keeps problems private. The teenager who handles stress internally. Adults often admire this independence. They see it as maturity. They see it as resilience. They see it as strength. But they rarely see the belief underneath it. If I rely on others, I might be disappointed. If I rely on others, I might be a burden. If I rely on others, I might lose control. So the safest option becomes self-reliance. This belief follows you into adulthood quietly. It shapes the way you approach challenges, relationships, and responsibilities. It shapes how you respond to stress. It shapes how you view help. When a problem appears, your nervous system does not ask who can help. It asks, how can I solve this alone? And every time you succeed, the belief strengthens. Doing everything alone becomes proof that you should keep doing everything alone. But this belief did not start in adulthood. It started in childhood, as a way to protect yourself from uncertainty, disappointment, and emotional unpredictability. And once we understand where the pattern begins, we can start to see how it continues to shape adult life. By the time this pattern reaches adulthood, it no longer feels like a strategy. It feels like reality. You don't experience it as, I learned to do everything alone. You experience it as, this is just how life works. You assume everyone is carrying their world alone, and you believe you are simply doing what responsible adults are supposed to do. But adulthood is where this pattern becomes more complicated, because adult life is not designed to be lived alone. It is designed to be shared. Responsibilities grow, decisions become heavier, and emotional challenges become more complex. Yet your instinct remains the same. Handle it. Fix it. Figure it out. Alone. This shows up most clearly in moments of stress. When something goes wrong, your brain immediately shifts into problem-solving mode. There is no pause to ask who could help. There is no pause to share the burden. There is only movement toward control. Toward solutions. Toward self-reliance. You become the person who researches everything. The person who prepares for every scenario. The person who anticipates problems before they happen. You double-check details. You plan ahead. You create backup plans. You minimize risks. And from the outside, this looks incredibly competent. People trust you. They rely on you. They assume you have everything under control. And this external trust becomes another layer reinforcing the pattern. Because the more capable you appear, the less people step in. And the less people step in, the more you feel responsible for everything. This dynamic often becomes especially visible in relationships. When you are used to doing everything alone, sharing responsibility can feel unfamiliar and uncomfortable. Even when someone offers help, part of you resists it. You might say yes to help, but secretly redo the task later. You might accept support, but feel uneasy while receiving it. You might allow someone to assist you, but feel a strong urge to stay in control of the outcome. Control becomes your safety net. If you are in control, you cannot be disappointed. If you are in control, things will get done. If you are in control, you are safe. But control has a hidden cost. It creates distance. When one person carries most of the responsibility, the relationship becomes unbalanced. Not because the other person does not want to help, but because you have become so accustomed to carrying everything that sharing feels unnatural. This can lead to quiet frustration. You might start feeling like you are the only one who takes things seriously. The only one who plans ahead. The only one who thinks about the future. The only one who keeps things together. You might begin thinking, why does it feel like everything depends on me? Why does no one step in? Why does no one take initiative? But beneath those questions is a deeper reality. You rarely allow space for others to step in. Not intentionally, but habitually. You move quickly. You solve problems fast. You anticipate needs before they are spoken. You take action before anyone else has time to respond. And over time, people adapt to this version of you. They begin to assume you prefer control. They begin to assume you do not need help. They begin to assume you will handle things the way you always have. This creates a cycle. The more you carry, the less others carry. The less others carry, the more you feel responsible. The more responsible you feel, the harder it becomes to step back. And stepping back feels risky. Because stepping back means allowing uncertainty. It means allowing mistakes. It means allowing imperfection. It means allowing someone else to influence the outcome. For someone used to doing everything alone, this can feel deeply uncomfortable. This pattern also shows up strongly in emotional life. When you are used to handling practical problems alone, you often handle emotional problems the same way. You process feelings internally. You analyze them privately. You try to solve them logically. You become your own therapist, your own advisor, your own emotional support system. You journal. You research. You think deeply. You try to understand yourself. And this self-awareness is valuable, but it can also become isolating when it replaces shared emotional experience. Because emotions are not only meant to be understood. They are meant to be shared. They are meant to be witnessed. They are meant to exist in connection. When you process everything internally, you miss the regulation that comes from being understood by another person. You miss the relief that comes from saying something out loud and hearing someone respond with empathy. Instead, emotions stay inside. They circulate. They repeat. They linger. This often creates a sense of emotional fatigue. A feeling of being mentally and emotionally tired without fully understanding why. You are always thinking, always analyzing, always carrying. And because this feels normal, you rarely question it. You may even feel uncomfortable when someone tries to help emotionally. When someone asks how you really feel, you may struggle to answer. When someone offers comfort, you may feel unsure how to receive it. When someone wants to support you, you may instinctively minimize your experience. It feels safer to say it is not a big deal. It feels safer to say you are fine. It feels safer to say you can handle it. Because accepting emotional support means stepping out of self-reliance and into vulnerability. And vulnerability feels unfamiliar territory. Over time, this constant self-reliance creates a quiet exhaustion. The kind that builds slowly. The kind that does not come from one big event, but from years of carrying responsibility without sharing the weight. You may not notice it directly. Instead, you feel tired more often. Overwhelmed more easily. Irritated more quickly. You feel like you need more rest but cannot fully relax. You feel like you are always on. This is the nervous system under constant responsibility. Always ready. Always prepared. Always carrying. And eventually, a question begins to appear. Not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly in the background. What would it feel like to not do everything alone? That question is uncomfortable. But it is also the beginning of change. When you spend years doing everything alone, your nervous system slowly builds a world where self-reliance feels safer than connection. At some point, it stops being about practicality and becomes about identity. You no longer just handle things alone. You begin to believe that you should handle things alone. It becomes a standard you hold yourself to, even when no one else is asking you to. This is where hyperindependence turns into an internal rule instead of a helpful skill. You begin to measure your worth by how much you can carry. You feel proud when you push through exhaustion. You feel proud when you solve problems without help. You feel proud when you manage stress quietly. Being capable becomes a core part of how you see yourself. But when worth becomes tied to self-reliance, needing help starts to feel like failure. You may not say that out loud. You may not even consciously think it. But the feeling is there. When you cannot figure something out immediately, you feel frustrated faster than most people. When you need help, you feel uncomfortable faster than most people. When you cannot solve a problem alone, you feel a quiet sense of shame that is difficult to explain. That feeling is not about the problem itself. It is about the identity that formed around independence. Because somewhere along the way, independence stopped being a tool and became proof of competence. This creates an invisible pressure to always be capable. Always be prepared. Always be responsible. Always be the one who has things under control. And this pressure follows you into every part of life. It shows up in work when you hesitate to ask questions because you want to prove you can figure things out yourself. It shows up in friendships when you struggle to admit you are overwhelmed because you want to remain the reliable one. It shows up in relationships when you take on more responsibility than you should because you feel safer being the stable one. Over time, this constant responsibility becomes exhausting. But instead of stepping back, you push harder. Because slowing down feels dangerous. Slowing down feels like losing control. And losing control feels like vulnerability. Vulnerability is the piece that often goes unspoken in hyperindependence. Because doing everything alone is not only about capability. It is about protection. When you rely on yourself, you avoid disappointment. When you rely on yourself, you avoid waiting. When you rely on yourself, you avoid uncertainty. When you rely on yourself, you avoid the emotional risk of someone not showing up. Hyperindependence becomes a shield against disappointment. If you do everything yourself, no one can let you down. If you do everything yourself, no one can forget. If you do everything yourself, no one can fail you. And at some point, this begins to feel safer than relying on others. But safety and connection do not grow in the same conditions. Connection requires shared responsibility. It requires trust. It requires allowing space for imperfection. It requires accepting that people will sometimes forget, misunderstand, or make mistakes. For someone used to hyperindependence, this feels deeply uncomfortable. Because imperfection feels risky. And risk feels unsafe. So instead of learning how to rely, you learn how to prevent reliance. You double-check plans. You confirm details. You prepare backup options. You anticipate problems before they happen. You reduce uncertainty wherever possible. This constant preparation creates a sense of control, but it also creates mental fatigue. Your brain is always running scenarios. Always thinking ahead. Always managing the future. This can show up as overthinking. Not because you enjoy thinking too much, but because your nervous system believes preparation equals safety. If you think through every possibility, nothing will surprise you. If nothing surprises you, nothing will overwhelm you. If nothing overwhelms you, you remain in control. And control feels safe. But the cost of constant control is chronic tension. It becomes difficult to relax fully. Difficult to switch off. Difficult to trust that things will work out without your constant involvement. Even rest can feel uncomfortable. Even relaxation can feel unproductive. Even free time can feel like something you should be using more efficiently. You may find yourself doing small tasks even when you are supposed to be resting. Answering emails. Organizing things. Planning ahead. Fixing small problems. Your mind keeps searching for something to manage. Because if you stop managing, something might go wrong. This is the nervous system that learned early that responsibility equals safety. Another hidden piece of hyperindependence is difficulty receiving care. Giving care feels natural. Providing support feels comfortable. Helping others feels easy. Receiving care feels unfamiliar. When someone offers to help, part of you feels grateful. Another part feels uneasy. You might feel like you are inconveniencing them. You might feel like you owe them. You might feel like you should return the favor immediately. Help begins to feel like debt. So you avoid creating the debt. You avoid needing the help. This creates an imbalance in relationships where you give more than you receive. Not because others do not want to help, but because receiving help feels emotionally uncomfortable. Over time, this imbalance can create quiet loneliness. Not because you are alone, but because you are used to carrying your inner world privately. You may feel surrounded by people and still feel like everything ultimately depends on you. This is the emotional isolation that can grow inside hyperindependence. And eventually, a realization begins to appear. Doing everything alone kept you safe at one point in your life. It protected you from uncertainty and disappointment. It helped you feel capable and in control. But the same strategy that protected you is now exhausting you. And once you recognize that, a new possibility begins to open. When you start recognizing the pattern of doing everything alone, something important shifts. For a long time, self-reliance probably felt like strength, responsibility, even maturity. It felt like proof that you could handle life. But understanding the pattern allows you to see a deeper truth. Independence is not supposed to mean isolation. Humans were never designed to carry life entirely on their own. Our nervous systems are built for cooperation, shared effort, and emotional support. The idea that you must handle everything alone is not a universal truth. It is a learned survival strategy. And like all survival strategies, it made sense at the time. There was a point in your life when relying on yourself felt safer than relying on others. It felt more predictable, more controllable, more secure. You adapted to the environment around you in the best way you could. You became capable, responsible, self-sufficient. That part of you deserves respect, not criticism. But the environment you live in now is not the same environment that shaped the strategy. Adult life offers something childhood often could not guarantee: the possibility of chosen support. The possibility of relationships built on mutual responsibility. The possibility of connection that does not depend on being perfect or self-sufficient all the time. This does not mean independence is wrong. Independence is valuable. It allows you to make decisions, take action, and navigate life confidently. The goal is not to lose independence. The goal is to expand beyond it. Because real strength includes the ability to rely on others when needed. This shift does not happen overnight. It begins with small changes in how you think about help. Instead of seeing help as weakness, you begin seeing it as collaboration. Instead of seeing support as dependency, you begin seeing it as connection. You start allowing small moments of shared responsibility. Accepting help with a task. Asking for advice before spending hours researching. Letting someone else carry part of the load. These moments may feel uncomfortable at first. Your instinct may still say you should handle it yourself. You may feel guilty. You may feel exposed. You may feel like you are inconveniencing someone. But discomfort does not mean you are doing something wrong. It means you are doing something unfamiliar. Your nervous system is learning a new rule. The rule that says you do not have to do everything alone anymore. Over time, this new rule begins to soften the constant pressure you have carried for years. The pressure to be the one who always knows what to do. The pressure to be the one who never struggles. The pressure to be the one who never needs help. You begin to experience something new. Relief. Relief from constant responsibility. Relief from constant preparation. Relief from constant control. You begin to notice that sharing responsibility does not make you less capable. It makes life more manageable. You begin to notice that people often want to help. Not out of obligation, but out of care. Out of connection. Out of the same human need to feel useful and supportive. Allowing others to help is not only beneficial for you. It strengthens relationships. It creates balance. It allows connection to move in both directions. Because connection is not built on one person giving and the other receiving. It is built on reciprocity. On shared effort. On mutual support. This does not mean everyone will always show up perfectly. People will still forget things. Make mistakes. Misunderstand. But relationships do not need perfection to be meaningful. They need openness. They need honesty. They need space for imperfection. Learning to rely on others is not about becoming dependent. It is about becoming connected. And connection reduces the emotional weight you have been carrying alone. You may still be independent. You may still be capable. You may still be self-sufficient. But you no longer have to be the only one responsible for everything in your life. And perhaps the most important realization of all is this. You were never meant to carry the entire world on your own. The part of you that learned to do everything alone was trying to keep you safe. But the part of you that is learning to share the load is trying to help you live.